Hello, everybody, and welcome to Haiku Talk. I'm your host, Ben Ga, your friendly neighborhood haiku poet. And today we're going to be taking a look at a piece from Edward J. Rielly from a chapbook, the chapbook called Learning to See. Now, this chapbook is one of 3 winners in the Brooks Books Haiku 2023 chapbook subscription series. Edward's Learning to See is one of them. Julie Schwerin's Walking Away from the Sunset is another winner. And then One Note Moon, my own book, is the 3rd winner. And I wanted to feature one of these, and so we're going to feature Edward Rielly because I've not featured him yet on the channel. So his poem has a first line of Another Drive. And with that said, you know what time it is. It's time to grab yourself a tasty beverage. Let's sit back, relax, and haiku. Welcome back, everybody. It's episode 74 of Haiku Talk. And in this episode, again, we are featuring a haiku from a chapbook called Learning to See from Edward J. Rielly. This is one of 3 books in the Brooks Books Haiku Chapbook Summer Series 2023. Learning to See, Walking Away from the Sunset, by Julie Schwerin, and then my own One Note Moon. And as I've already featured Julie on the site, and I generally don't like to feature my own poems on the site, we are going to take a look at a poem from this book as a way to celebrate the series and another way to look at a great piece of literature. Now, this series you can buy these books individually, or you can buy them as a subscription, so all 3 for one set price, which is a bundled savings price. There are also international PDF versions of the books for those that shipping and handling might be a little bit expensive to get outside of the United States. So there are many options there for people to access these books. They are wonderful. They are small, as you can see, very nice. Smaller than your head, fits perfectly in the palm of the hand, great for a backpack, great for a purse, great for you can even put it in your cargo pants, short pockets. This poem comes from one of the sections here, and I find it very apt for the time of life we're in this world of post-pandemic world, and it's just kind of a great piece. Let's take a look at it, and I'll talk more about it then. The poem goes like this. Another drive on a road we don't know. A summer of COVID. Another drive on a road we don't know. A summer of COVID. Yes, now I really, really, really like this because it hits home for me, because during those COVID years and since, I have really taken it upon myself to get out and do a lot of driving, do a lot of back roads driving, venturing out and seeing a lot of the state parks here in the state of Missouri, which is where I live. And I've been amazed just to kind of get out and explore, and getting out and exploring in your car was a great way to get out in the COVID times, because you're isolated, but yet you can still go out and see things and do things and get out and explore, engage that active mind of and that willingness, that desire to get out and do something. And so this poem really, really hits home for me. It's like the perfect kind of like reflective piece at this point in the pandemic or the post-pandemic. The poem follows the fragment and phrase, but it puts the phrase up front, with the first 2 lines of another drive on a road we don't know. That's the phrase. And then the fragment is a summer of COVID. And now the fragment and phrase structure, which we see a lot of, is great because it showcases the juxtapositions. And haiku is all about juxtapositions, specifically a juxtaposition of two things. In this case, we have the fragment and we have a phrase. There are two things that can stand alone by themselves, but when you put them together next to each other, like colors on a canvas, they vibrate, they resonate, they give you a moment of pause, they give you a moment of clarity, they give you something to really sink your teeth into. And so in this case, with the phrase of another drive on a road we don't know, gives you this idea of something happening, and then the fragment at the end, a summer of COVID, snaps everything into place, gives you context, gives you, now I know where I am, now I know what I'm doing, now I understand the weight of the situation. And then it allows you to reread the poem with that context in mind and enjoy it even more. Because that's the beauty of these poems. Once you get to the end and you know the context, every time you revisit them, you already kind of know where you're at. And so it makes rereading them really, really enjoyable, I find. And I reread haiku a lot, either in books, journals, anthologies, you name it. I generally don't read things just once. I will read things a couple times. In case of anthologies, like my copy of the Haiku anthology, edited by Cor Vanden Heuvel, edition 3. I'm making my 15th round through that book right now. And so, yeah, I reread all the time. And this is why. I mean, you read one of these things once, and then, you come back to it again, and you're like, oh, yeah, I know what this is. I know this moment. I know where I am. This is great. And Edward does a really good job building something here. So let's break this down line by line and see what's happening. So we have that first line of another drive. Another drive. And that line puts you right into a situation. You're on another drive. Now, we have no idea where we're going. We don't know the context of that drive, but we're in a car, we're in a truck, we're going someplace. And it's something that we're doing again. We've done it multiple times. Hence, this is another drive, not just first drive, not just a drive. It is another drive. And so that uses that suggestive language, that's simple, those 3 S's of haiku language, simple, succinct, suggestive. It uses that suggestive language to imply that this is part of a pattern of things. We're going on another drive. And so we're kind of leaning into that already at line 1, that we're going on a drive, and it is something we've been doing, have done before. Then we flip to line 2. On a road we don't know. On a road we don't know. Now that, to me, completing the phrase at this point, is a very exciting line, because it's about taking chances. It's about risk taking. It's about going exploring, doing things you haven't done before. Even though we know it's another drive, we are exploring. And that really engages me both as a person, as well as a creative person, thinking about trying new things, writing another poem, trying to get to something new. And so I'm really happy with this lines 1 and 2. Then we go to line 3, and we get the fragment, and we get the thing that brings it all together. A summer of COVID. A summer of COVID. And man, I mean, it just hits like a ton of bricks, pardon the cliche. But, it's just where we are now as a planet, as everybody's going through the same thing collectively. And we're looking back at what we did or what we're doing. Now, this poem was written, obviously, in the heart of the summer of COVID, because it's not a looking back poem. It's a participating in poem. And so this is one that I'm reading now, but I'm thinking back of to the time when in the very beginning days of COVID, when, it seemed like you turned in and every month, the next month ahead of you would be canceled. That's before we knew we were going to be in it for like a year or two. You get the stats and like, oh, I'm sorry, the month of June is going to be canceled, and they're already canceling things for July. And so, after a little while, you just got tired of staying inside, and I went out and exploring. I did a lot of hiking. I got on my bike, did a lot of biking. I bought a little kayak, got out on the water, got out and really just did things that they only required me to do. And what's nice about this is obviously speaking from a place where you are, we're holding up together with a group, with a person, a family. It could be a loved one, families, whatever. And you're getting out and you're exploring together, doing something that probably you might not have done a whole lot of before the pandemic. I know I can say for myself, before the pandemic, my eyes, when I think about traveling, I'd always think far away, across the pond, somewhere else, somewhere part of the world I haven't been before. But with the pandemics, with everything being shut down, it really caused me to focus really closely and do things and see things that I would never have seen any other way, which is kind of a mixed blessing of some of the impact of COVID and the way that it brought us together to rethink about what our priorities are and to spend time in places that in this case, they're on a road they've never been before, doing things you haven't done before, maybe as a group or as a family. And I just really responded to this piece. It's very well written, very well captures the time that we're in. It's a very timely poem, very timely book. That whole section is about COVID. And it's one of those ways where, you can see how this genre of poetry can react and respond to events around us. They don't just always have to be about a stone Buddha or about sunsets or about protests or about this or that. It can be about something as big as COVID. But if you look at the way that this talks about COVID, it's showing us a moment of how somebody's living in this summer of COVID. And that's a key thing here. It's also doing it in a way where it's not talking so specific about what this poet what his life was. It's still generic and open enough that we can identify with these things in ourselves and in our own lives. Because that's a key difference about haiku and senryu, is that distance from the very, very personal, intricate details of the poet. Like you might get in other types of longer form poetry, confessional poetry and whatnot, narrative poetry, that types of things, but where you really want to know the details of somebody's specific life. Here it's more open, it's more sharing kind of a universal, a human experience. And it's very well done here, as are, it's a very, very fine collection of work. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend Julie's book as well. And of course, I can't help but I would recommend my own, One Note Moon. That wraps up today's edition of Haiku Talk. Thank you all for tuning in. Once again, my name is Ben Ga, your friendly neighborhood haiku poet. The YouTube stuff that I gotta say is, if you liked this episode, please give it a thumbs up. If you have watched a couple of these now but haven't subscribed to the channel, think about subscribing. It does help the channel out and helps us show up in algorithms and so forth, so that when people Google things or search things in YouTube, we might just pop up. And then if you liked and subscribed, think about ringing the bell to get notifications when new episodes arrive. And with that said, thank you all for tuning in. Until next time, peace, everybody.